Episode 168P. What? What's the reaction I see?
That's a big number.
Well,
100, yeah, but 168?
Well, you got to do it times 2 because this is 168P, and 168 is the free show that's available on Mondays. 168P is for the patrons. So really, we're up to 3 years plus now. We've gone over the 3-year threshold, and we're at about, I want to say we've done just about 400 shows, give or take. How about that?
Hey, that is something.
I don't know if it's something good or it's something else or
something great. 400?
It's certainly something. There's no question about that, right?
I found this out about comic books. When they release a new comic book, they expect the highest selling number to be the first one. And then it's basically a race to see how long they can keep selling them before they pull the plug. And I was like, God, that's depressing. And Mitch Unfiltered is the exact opposite.
No.
It is taken off.
No, actually, it is exactly the same. Episode number 1 of Mitch Unfiltered, where I talked about what got me here, what landed me here, is by far and away the most popular by a landslide episode that we've ever done. It's actually, this is truth, and I really shouldn't even be talking about this. It's been downloaded in, I believe, 74 countries, Danny O'Neill. Episode 1. Yeah. So we've gone straight down the toilet since episode number 1.
No,
we're just
that's
like
not
the
true.
comics.
That's called seeding the clouds. You seeded the clouds everywhere. The rain has followed.
Oh, dear. Well, maybe not. But, with people like you, nice people like you, who have given me an opportunity to share in your visits, this is what keeps refueling Mitch Unfiltered. Not me, not this. They get this all the time, but they get once a week Danny O'Neill, who's willing to, pipe up from his little abode in Manhattan.
You make it sound like there's some sort of line of people that are out there like, hey, would you come on the podcast? No, man, I've got nothing to do. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, we have on this episode 168P a number of different topics to check off the list. Very important sports topics, but I'm going to surprise you with my start. You probably know because you're a universal man. You're a man of many, many wisdoms and much knowledge. You know that I'm in the midst.
I'm being set up.
You know that I'm in the midst of celebrating the 8 days, the 8 nights of Hanukkah. It's very early this year. Came right after Thanksgiving. Typically, it's in and around Christmas time, Christmas Day. But this year, we started, the Jews started really, really early this year. And the tradition, as you know, is for most families, you give a small gift to your family members, one a night. Instead of getting 8 or 10 or 12 on Christmas Day under the tree, we get one a night, and then we're done with it.
Superior gift-giving holiday, by far.
I don't know about that.
Yes, without a doubt. The sequencing, the build-up, the fact that it's spread out is fantastic.
You like that?
Yes.
Well, it's spread out over 8 days. And on day number 2, I figured that my gift as a long-suffering, not as much as you maybe, but a long-suffering Mariners fan since 1995 was ace left-hander Robbie Ray through free agency. I couldn't think of a better Hanukkah night number 2 gift than Robbie Ray. So I got that going for me, which is nice.
Pretty good one. He came in a very tight wrapping paper. He was tightly wrapped when he was delivered to you.
I loved it, and I said to myself and my family, you can't top this. The sad part is it was only day 2, and here we are with 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, and there's nothing that's going to top Robbie Ray until they did the impossible. My wife did the impossible. My night 3, now let's see if this resonates with you. My night 3 gift that was given to me was an ice maker that makes ice the way Taco Time and Mod Pizza, these little nuggets of it. Do you know, are you an ice guy at all?
Yes, I know exactly. And I'd like to know where the little mini ice, because it's the small cylindrical ones, right?
Yes.
It's barreled.
Yes.
And the key to the small ice is that gets your drink cold faster, because there's more total surface area as opposed to the bigger ice cube, which then just melts slower. And so even if you're talking the same volume of ice, you want the smaller ones because it accelerates the chilling of the drink.
The truth of the matter is all that might be exactly right, but that's not why I love that ice. There's something.
Why do you love the ice?
There's something about just the texture, the nature, the size. You throw it in your mouth. There's just something about. I've always said to my family, every time I've gone to Taco Time or Mod Pizza or any of these places that has that ice that I think we all know what I'm talking about, I walk out of there and I go, why can't we have this ice at home? I want this ice at home. And night number 3 of 2021 Hanukkah, I have a little machine and it's making ice right now as we speak. In fact, we got to get through this stuff because Danny, I've been peeing all day. I've been taking water breaks and Coke breaks and anything that you can put in ice I've been doing. So I might have to stop in the middle of this episode 168P, just so you know.
That is totally fine. And I would say that when we get to episode 214P or thereabouts, we need to put a pin in this conversation and to see if the small ice has retained the glory. With familiarity, does the specialness wear off? Or does it remain you're just like living on cloud 9, like perpetually got the best ice?
Yeah. It's a good question. You think maybe the novelty will run its course?
It's possible.
And by 214P, I won't even remember that I have that ice machine.
Or you might be, I cannot imagine what life was like before this.
Okay.
I'm like the first caveman that learned to use tools.
Yes.
Homo habilis, I believe was his name. Yes. Like you'll be like, I have taken a step forward on the evolutionary chart because of the small ice.
Okay. Will you put it in your day timer 214P?
Yes, it is. I've started one of the classes I've been taking is about time management. So it's about setting all these reminders. I'm going to throw that thing in about I don't know, 6-7 months down the line, and we'll check back.
I need to take that same course, by the way. And the nicest thing about you putting it in your day timer for 214P is that just means that Danny O'Neill has just signed a lucrative extension on Mitch Unfiltered.
No, like not to spoil it. It doesn't have to be lucrative. Like I told you, I'm not doing anything else, and I don't see that changing anytime in the near future. I don't believe the demand is suddenly going to increase for me. So you don't need to money whip me.
No, I'm not money whipping you. People in our audience are saying, Mitch, you're talking about ice in a week like this, in a week where the Mariners do this, in a week that the Kraken do this, in a week that the University of Washington football team does this, in a week that the Seattle Seahawks kind of do this. How could you be talking about ice at a time like this? Okay, I'll stop talking about ice. I want to talk about Thanksgiving now before we get to those things, because Danny O'Neill has a terrific tale to weave. And when I say tale, I don't mean fictitious. I don't think this is fiction. This is true.
No.
He has a great story to tell about where he spent Thanksgiving in 2021.
I did. I went to Yosemite, which is an annual tradition in my father's family. My father comes from, I believe it's a certified brood of Irish cat. I brood, Brood.
Yeah.
He was one of 9 kids. We counted it up. I am one of 38 cousins. We used to be known as the grandchildren, but that's not accurate anymore,
right?
Because my cousins have had kids and there's a whole nother generation beyond us, but it is a big sprawling Irish Catholic family. And every year at Thanksgiving, we go to Yosemite. It's called Wawona, and it is just inside the south entrance. It's a little village that actually predates the formation of the national park. And there's probably like 300 cabins there. Mm-hmm. And the families rent cabins throughout this little village, and we spend Thanksgiving there. And it was a relatively small gathering this year. One of my larger broods of cousins, the Bronze, my dad's second oldest daughter, their kids didn't come. Only one of their 9 came. So we were a little bit down. It was just a group of 50 this year. But my wife and I flew to Fresno. So we might have crossed paths with Kalen DeBoer. Drove up to Wawona, stayed with my sister and her 2 kids in a cabin, and spent the holiday weekend there.
That is so beautiful.
It's gorgeous. That is 2 years beautiful. 2 years ago, we had massive snow. This year, it was bluebird skies, really fairly warm temperatures up into the 50s. But yeah, it was gorgeous.
What do you see?
So this year, we went and hiked up to Mirror Lake. We drove down to the valley floor. So Yosemite's known for these big waterfalls and like El Capitan, like the sheer rock face, and Half Dome.
Right.
First 10 years of my life, I thought Yosemite meant my cousins. Like I thought it meant, we go stay in these cabins and we can just run around. We don't need to drive anywhere and see each other. Like somebody was like, have you been to Yosemite? I'm like, yeah, I go to Yosemite all the time. They're like, isn't Half Dome great? Half Dome? I don't know what you're talking about. Like where the swinging gate bridge, like the swinging bridge we go to, and we won't. But we did go down to the valley floor one day. We hiked up to Mirror Lake, which is just under Half Dome. We also did hike out to the swinging bridge. And did a fair amount of cooking. There was no snow this year. Sometimes that's it. We hiked part of the way up to Chilnewalna Falls, which is right there near Wawona. It's fantastic.
Did you see any exotic species, any exotic animals on your trip this Thanksgiving or not? Nothing that jumps into your mind.
4 years ago, my nephew Riley, and he hates when I bring this up, we're pretty sure he ate deer poop down on the valley floor and said it was an M&M. We watched it. We watched him put it in his mouth, and then he started spitting it out. And my sister just collapsed laughing because she thought it was the funniest thing. There were deer there. People did see deer. I don't think I saw the deer this year, and there were no bears, which was grateful. The bears are fairly much more rare than they were when I was a kid. Yeah, no exotic wildlife.
Okay. Well, is it possible that in the first few days of December, in the Pacific Northwest where I sit, you don't, that the Seattle Mariners have wrestled the sports headlines away from everybody? Seahawks, Sonics, University of Washington. When was the last time in December? Now, maybe you would say, because I remember where I was when we got the news of Robinson Cano.
I do too.
I remember we were doing a Mitch in the Morning show on location. You probably were there in San Francisco on the Friday. They were playing the 49ers, I think certainly on a Sunday, a big game, 49ers Seahawks. And on the Friday, we were at some diner set up in San Francisco doing the radio show when the news came down that the Seahawks had acquired Robinson Cano. That's probably the last time in December or November or football season that you could safely say that the Mariners are gaining all of our attention. Yes?
Yeah, it was. And that was, I believe, the same day that Chris Peterson, we found out, was named the head coach at Washington. He wasn't named. We found out he was going to be the head coach at Washington. But that was the last time the Mariners did something that generated this kind of buzz and this kind of feeling. And even then with Cano, there was kind of the hope that was going to put it over the top. But did we feel like the Mariners had this kind of momentum where they were coming off of an improbable season?
I don't remember. You tell me. I don't remember.
I know that there was, because the Mariners ended up on the cover of Sports Illustrated in that upcoming spring after signing Cano. So there must have been a fair amount of, but I don't think it was the same feeling. Like it felt like this year for the first time, maybe since like 2002, 2003, that they really had a tide of enthusiasm among the fan base, that there was really that even the typical naysayer of Mariner baseball was drowned out by people that were really enthusiastic about this team.
Do you know much about Robbie Ray? And the reason I ask is, look, I know Robbie Ray. I remember when he pitched for, I think it was the Diamondbacks for a while, maybe the Tigers. He was always a very powerful left-handed pitcher.
Yes.
As I recall, he walked a lot of guys. I didn't really follow enough closely. It almost felt like he popped out of somewhat obscurity this year to become the Cy Young. So on one hand, I'm excited that, oh my God, the Mariners went out and acquired during the offseason the reigning American League Cy Young Award winner. And then the other part of me is like, was it a kind of a, let's hope it wasn't a one-hit wonder, kind of an aberration of a season, Danny?
This was the conversation we had. It feels Beltre-ish, doesn't it? Because when the Mariners signed Adrian Beltre, I think he's coming off a year where he hit like 45 home runs.
He did. He definitely did, yeah.
He just hit. And so we were having that because you're buying high. I mean, this is a guy that was, I think he made $8 million last year.
One-year contract. That's all he got was a one-year contract.
And you're buying high. And I agree with you. And looking at his numbers, and I'm familiar with Robbie Ray, and he's definitely someone that, because of how hard he throws and the fact that he's a left-hander, has been, baseball guys say now, swing and miss stuff, right? Like that's the name for him. Like he can miss bats, and that's the most valuable trait a pitcher can have. But he's had control issues, and he put it all together that last season. And you're buying high. You're buying very high on him. Last year he was available for a 1 year, $8 million deal, and now your 5 years was $115 million. At the same time, I like this bet for two reasons. You're buying him for years age 30 to 34. You're not buying him post 35. It's not the same as your typical, like when they signed Robinson Cano, they were paying for post 35 seasons. When you're like, yeah, you can't expect, you're hoping that guy holds on at that point. You're not. I like the point he is in his career. And the Mariners have a lot of competitive, hard driving. I like Marco Gonzalez because I like how much of a bulldog competitor he is, but he throws low 90s. This is a guy that does something different. This guy's a hard thrower.
Yeah. Oh,
and I like
the hardest left-handed thrower in the game. And I think I read, which it was stunning. We talked about it on our last show, 168. I think over the first 1,000 innings of his career, he has struck out more guys than anybody in baseball history. Did you read that? How could that be true? How could Bob Gibson? How could Randy Johnson? How could Sandy Koufax? How could pick your Nolan Ryan? How could this guy have struck out more guys in his first 1,000 innings than those guys? That's not.
Do you want to know the answer? You want to know the answer?
Uh-oh. You're gonna,
because he doesn't throw that long. Like he doesn't last long in games. Like he does. He strikes out a ton of people, but his control has meant that he doesn't pitch deep into games. He doesn't. That's not been his MO.
But this year his control was much better. The numbers are much better, right? He figured, and I read something about that he tinkered with something in exhibition baseball that really helped him curtail the walks. I don't know if you believe any of that stuff, but whatever.
I do. The question is it sustainable, or did you buy his best season? Because players have fluctuations, and is it, given his track record, is it likely that he is going to stay as good as he was last year for the next 5 years? No, but I like the bet because he's a different kind of pitcher, and this is not bargain hunting. This wasn't, well, let's see what's left over there. No, this was a guy that fits a need that they have, and I kind of wondered, are you going to get somebody better than Kikuchi? Like they didn't pick up the option on him, right? And it was $13 million, and there's. Right. Scott Boras is making noise through John Heyman, who carries his water without question, about the people that are interested in Kikuchi. I'd much rather have Robbie Ray.
Of course.
Much rather have Robbie Ray. I'd much rather pay Robbie Ray twice as much as you say Kikuchi because of what I think the upside is there.
And then the obvious thing that Ray does that you don't talk about because it's maybe as obvious as the nose on my face, but it's still a great thing, is, God, don't you love Marco Gonzalez as a number 2 guy?
Yep.
Don't you love Flexen and Gilbert, or Gilbert and Flexen as 3s and 4s, as opposed to Marco Gonzalez as your ace, where he doesn't throw particularly hard. He doesn't seem to have ace stuff, swing and miss stuff. I mean, everything about their rotation looks better when you put a stud up there and shift everybody down. Yes?
100%. And now you've got some room. Where does Logan Gilbert have to be the guy that takes that quantum leap? Because I love Marco's makeup, and I think Marco is the leader of that pitching staff. But there's a difference between being the leader and the guy and being the ace. And I think that his stuff makes it tough for him to be that kind of ace. And now you've got Robbie Ray, who's your reigning Cy Young, and you've got Logan Gilbert, who you expect to eventually get there and have that kind of stuff. That
beautiful.
We'll see what his ceiling is, but you filled at the top as opposed to let's add to that middle. You went bought from the top shelf. I love that.
All right. Before we get off of the Mariners, quickly, Adam Frazier was acquired the week earlier, and he, of course, made the All-Star team in the National League, I think, as a Pirate before he was traded over to the Padres. Didn't do so well in San Diego, but he comes in here as either the starting second baseman / outfielder or the super utility man. So you add him. And he hit about 300 last year. He's like a career 280 hitter. So you add him, you add You add Robbie Ray at the top of the rotation. Let's finish our Mariners chat with what next. Now, everybody here would love to see Chris Bryant come in and be in the middle of the lineup and maybe play third base. I still think, and I know maybe people think I'm crazy, but bring Nelly Cruz back. I know he's 80, but he just looks like a guy. I mean, what makes you think that if Nelson Cruz, who comes back to, we always get these guys who you're always a little bit unsure. Is he going to like it here? Is he going to like Safeco? Is he going to like the lifestyle in Seattle? Is that little stuff going to affect and bring down his performance? And a guy like Nelson Cruz, you bring back, he loves it here. He loves the organization. He loves the stadium. He knows it. He knows like the back. I would think you're guaranteed if you can get a deal on him for, 30, 27, 30, 32 home runs in the middle of that lineup. I'm all for
pretty
it.
Good.
Pretty
good. Remember, before Nelly came here, it was the talk of this is wwhere free agent bats come to die. And Nelly changed that.
That's right.
Nelly was a guy that overperformed, that he came after what was there was some question. He faced a performance-enhancing a PED suspension earlier, but there were questions when they signed him after that season in Baltimore of how long are you going to be able to project. And all the guy did and has done is clobber the baseball since then. I'm not against Nelly and would totally support that. I do. They need power from one of those corner infield spots. You've got to get some power. I love Ty France and think he's a bat that you pencil in there every day. But I think I'd lean to Bryant over Nelly for the simple fact that you're putting somebody at a corner that's got some pop.
I got it. And you know that I must love Nelly because of the story when he was in town that you may or may not know, but I've told a 1,000 times. At some point, these movie theaters, I don't know who's been to a movie since the pandemic, but these movie theaters many years ago, they went to reserved seating where you went online and you actually purchased a certain seat as opposed to the old days where you went to the theater and you picked a seat. And I took my family to some movie in Factoria at the AMC Factoria theaters, all four of us, and I did what a proud dad would do. I went online. I got my 4 seats. It was like a late afternoon movie. It wasn't going to be a problem. And I even dropped the 3 of them off, my wife and 2 sons off at the front, and then went and parked the car, only to come into the theater and see wife, son, Nelly in my seat. And now I got to make a decision whether I'm going to deck him, whether I'm going to take Nelly out. And I can remember my 2 sons who were baseball fans and recognized him immediately, kind of looked over their shoulder and were like, "Dad, sit over there. Oh, there's a seat over there." So from that point on, I called him the seat swiper on social media, and he loved that, and he retweeted and everything else. So I'm even advocating bringing the seat swiper back to the Pacific Northwest, Danny. So
you ever heard Cedric the Entertainer's bit talking about the difference between how white folks and black folks treat someone sitting in their seats?
No, tell me, please.
Cedric, and it's a very funny bit, and everybody should watch it. But Cedric explains that white folks hope nobody's sitting in my seat. I hope nobody's sitting in our seats.
Yeah.
Black fella, I wish somebody would sit in my seat. Those are my 2 right there. 3 and 4. 3 and 4. God. So that's the energy I want. You like you. Hey, that's my seat. My seat. I paid it. You see that right here, Nelly? Right here. I don't know if you could see this. This isn't like the breaking ball. You can't just look for the rotation. Get up out of there.
Trust me. When Nelly looks up and sees me coming. Oh boy. Okay, let's ring the bell and move on because there's a lot to get to, and I don't want to keep you until the next day in New York.
We've already covered this. I got nothing to do.
Okay. Kalen DeBoer is the name. Now, I have a theory on this because I believe, like everything else, all things are relative. And it just so happens that the University of Washington hire their next head coach, an offensive mind, a quarterback guru who might bring the former UW quarterback that threw for 32 touchdowns at Fresno, might bring him with him back to the University of Washington, might be great for Sam Eward, might be exactly what the University of Washington wanted. But they did it like 12 hours after Lincoln Riley went to USC.
Yep.
And I know I'm not a UW through and through guy. I got a son who goes to the UW, but I know the proud UW people that want to think, oh, we are USC, we are UCLA, we are Notre Dame, we are Alabama. That's how hard. I know the Tyee people, the Tyee club people, probably a hard pill to swallow that they get Lincoln Riley and we get Kalen DeBoer. Other than that, what do you think?
I think it's a good hire. And it's totally fine. I would have liked Matt Campbell more, but I think that's unrealistic to think that Matt Campbell is going to leave Iowa State for Washington. If he's going to leave Iowa State, he's going to leave for a clearly better job. And I think Washington's a better job than Iowa State. I don't know if that's the job you leave something that you've set up for. Washington is never going to hire Lincoln Riley. It's not going to happen. And I think that was a great hire for USC. In fact, a surprisingly great hire, because that school can't seem to get out of its own way when it comes to deciding the direction. They make weird decisions given the pedigree and the resources that school has. That said, I think Lincoln Riley is a home run hire. Of all of the hires that we've seen so far, I think it blows it out of they've had the best hire of this cycle.
Sure.
Washington got a good hire. I'm not as excited about this as I was about when Jimmy Lake was promoted, but look at how Jimmy Lake turned out. You don't really know. I love the fact that Kalen DeBoer has demonstrated proficiency at improving offenses. He's done it repeatedly at multiple levels at different stops. He's got a track record as a head coach, just not the past 2 years at Fresno State, but say what you want about NAIA. Like, that guy showed he was a leader there. I don't know if he can recruit. Anybody that tells you that they know about his recruiting, they're selling you something. That's the bet. That's the hope here.
Okay.
Is that he's going to be able to recruit. It's a totally fine hire. And people that are mad about it, you've got a distorted view of where Washington is right now in the college football hierarchy.
You're not going to be welcome to tailgating parties.
That's
in the North Lawn.
No, because I've got my own spot. I know what you're saying, and there are Tyee people that will sit there and say Washington's a really good job. Washington's not USC. It's not, and they're not going to be able to hire them. And I would go a step further and say the most acclaimed hires that Washington has made in the past 20 years haven't turned out the best. Rick Neuheisel's their best coaching hire, in my opinion, other than Chris Peterson since Don James. And Neuheisel was kind of treated like, he's getting out of Dodge a little bit ahead of some really unhappy people in Colorado. Like, Colorado wasn't super satisfied with him, and that turned out great. Jimmy Lake was universally heralded, and that turned out terribly. So Tyrone Willingham, I was super pumped for Tyrone Willingham. It was a disaster. I think this is a good hire. Stinks that it happened the same time as Lincoln Riley.
If Kalen DeBoer wants to bring Jake Haener back after his 32 touchdown, 9 interceptions, many called him, in fact, Rick Neuheisel called him on our show, really one of the great standout quarterback performances in the nation this year in college football. If Coach DeBoer was faced with the following dilemma: 1 year of Haener and no more years of Heward, or say no thank you to Haener and have Sam Heward as your starting quarterback as a sophomore and for the following, 2 years. What would he choose? What should he choose? What do you think he will choose if faced with that? Because I don't know. And look, I'm not saying to you that I know for set. I didn't talk to Damon that if he brings in Jake Haener that Heward's going to say, I'm going to the transfer portal to play right away somewhere else. I don't know that, but clearly that's a possibility if he brings in a hired gun that's that Heward perceives, I can't even compete with this guy. If he brings in Haener, there is no competition. He's not bringing in Haener to back me up after the guy threw for 32 touchdowns last year for this coach. If he brings in Haener, he's telling me you're second string next year. What about all that?
If Sam is going to leave or would be prompted to leave, which I wouldn't blame him if Haener transfers here, I would prefer that Haener not come here. And I like Jake Haener as a player. I was bummed when he transferred. There was a part of me that felt like they were going with Jacob Eason because of the pedigree and the arm side and how he was going to be the more attention grabbing quarterback as opposed to just turning it over to Jake Haener. But Sam Heward is the highest. He's the highest rated high school quarterback recruit that they've had since Brock, right?
Yes.
I mean, Eason was a similarly high caliber recruit, but he'd gone to Georgia and that hadn't worked out.
Yeah.
And if you're telling me the 1 year you're going to take with Sam Heward was this past season, in which, I mean, I'm sure that there's a way that they could have destroyed his confidence more. I'm sure there's some sort of thing, like maybe if they had bleached his uniform entirely or just a lot. But I don't think I've ever seen an offense handled as poorly overall as this one was last year, culminating with the one start you get comes at the point in which the bag, this season was a bag containing dog poop that was soaked, set on fire, stomped upon. And at the point in which it looked most likely that the bottom was going to completely drop out, spilling the poo all over everyone, that's when it was handed to Sam. It was like, here you go. Here's your shot. And like, oh, what happened? Oh, yeah. Oh, the poo came spilling out in everybody's lap. It was like, if that's,
oh boy.
So my answer to that is, if Jake Haener's coming here and that means that Sam Heward's leaving, that's a miss, because 1 year of a good quarterback at Fresno State, it's not going to get you. You need long-term progress, and having the highest rated quarterback recruit that you've had in 25 years leave with getting one start at the end of an absolutely horrific season, that doesn't advance the program.
So immediate gains, let's pass on for the health, the future health of the program. All right, let's end with what we saw on Monday night, which wasn't pretty.
Oh.
You talk about what do they say, putting lipstick on a pig, that last drive. Was that not the dictionary definition, if there is such a thing, of lipstick on a pig, the last drive to get him in position with a 2-point conversion? Then, of course, on the 2-point conversion, he throws the ball a little bit wide of where he needed to throw it to allow the Washington defender to come in and break up the play and actually intercept the ball. So, it's over. It's over for the 2021 Seattle Seahawks. It's over.
Yes. It was the death rattle.
Is it over for this era, this glorious era of Seahawks football? We've been asking it for weeks. The spotlight now shifts she probably hates this, that it shifts to Jody Allen, who Peter King told me on today's podcast, she probably is terribly uncomfortable with even the notion of having to make this decision herself. Like, she's got Bert Cold, who we all know a little bit, who was around Paul, her brother, all those years. Does Pete Carroll want to come back? Should he come back? Why are they in this position? Is John Schneider, the decisions that they've made in the draft and some of the trades, is that the reason why we are where we are today? And then there's Russell Wilson, who says the finger's just fine. So if the finger's just fine, have you just lost it? Have you just gone from one of the great all-time quarterbacks to one of the worst 10 quarterbacks that are starting in the National Football League? Because if your finger's just fine, you talk about that bag of poo that you just referred to. That's what the quarterbacking of the Seattle Seahawks has looked like the last 3 or 4 weeks, with the exception of the final drive and whatever. He's been terrible. You know, he's terrible. If the receivers aren't wide open down the field, he's missing them. He's either not seeing them, or when he does seeing them, he's throwing them 60 feet over their head. So what? Where do we go from here in New York, Danny O'Neill?
You've got a series of decisions to make. Let's start with the one that's out of the team's control, and that's what Russell wants. We don't know. I can guess. It looks like if he was unhappy after a 12-win season in which they lost in the playoffs,
right.
What's this going to be like?
Right.
So I have a guess that he's probably going to want to be moved. Now, if you're Seattle, you have to make a decision about why Russell has looked so bad. Is it simply because of the injury? That's possible. It's the first time he's missed games. It's the first time in his career he's missed games. He made a huge production of how quick he was coming back. It's clear he is uncharacteristically inaccurate. Pete said it doesn't look like that in practice. Like, however you get to the bottom. Is he struggling because of injury? He's also, as they made a big deal about Monday night, he's 33. We don't know how Russell's going to age. We assume that quarterbacks now thrive through their 30s, right? That's the new timetable. We assume that they're fine until 40. Heck, Brady's going in his mid-40s. So, but Russell's from that generation. He was one of the mobile quarterbacks. He and Cam Newton and Colin Kaepernick and Andrew Luck and Robert Griffin III. That was that five-some of guys that were changing. Well, you look at how all of those guys have aged and they get beat up. Cam Newton hit the wall. Kaepernick you throw out because there were other things. Griffin hasn't been in the league now, and he wasn't effective after his first couple years. And has he hit a tipping point? Has he hit a tipping point where he's not going to be as effective going forward? The third part is maybe this is he really does want out, and this is affecting his performance. He's not feeling the same about it, and hard as he's trying to be
Randy Johnson
professional.
What year was it?
1998.
Remember?
4.34 ERA for the Mariners. I think he had a 9-10 record. He got traded to the Houston Astros. He was 10-1 the rest of the way with a sub-2 ERA. And there are people that explain to you statistically it wasn't that big a difference. He wasn't tanking it. Look, we all saw it. He was mad. The Mariners didn't extend his contract. The Mariners made a huge mistake by making that decision. They paid for it for the next 4 years as he was winning Cy Youngs. But as soon as he got out of here, great. He went 10-1 and then won the next 4 Cy Youngs.
1.12 ERA, I think, in Houston the second half of the year. Yeah, something really close to that. Yes.
Yeah. So if you're Seattle, you have to make a decision. And if you think it's just the injury, or you think that this is a 98 Randy Johnson type thing, you've got to make a decision about whether or not you're going to do everything you can to make him happy and stay here. Which, by the way, isn't a done deal because he might decide he'd rather go somewhere else, even if you changed everything here, that you had your chances to make me happy. I'm not sticking around here for the heavy lifting that it's going to take to get this thing back on the right course. I'm out of here. But if you're the Seahawks, do you do everything you can to make him happy? That's the first decision that you need to come to. And everything follows after that. Like I would say this, that you can't expect to reboot with a new quarterback. You can't, there's a lot about how this team is put together that would make me feel that if there's any chance that you have to keep Russell Wilson, that's exactly that's the direction you absolutely have to go. And only if he's absolutely adamant that I'll never play another down, which I don't know if he's got that within his makeup. That's the reason that you would move on from him. That I would be more inclined to look at other changes as opposed to changing
Pete Carroll.
Yeah, I'd be more inclined to I would be more inclined to take a look at that. And why has this team stopped playing some of the younger players? Why has the defense, which kind of we all look at the points per game and say that they're fine. Their defense is bad. The reason they're not giving up more points is the other team doesn't need to have more possessions. I mean, they're not stopping anybody. They're not. And why is that? And maybe that's the decision that you come to. I can't see just rebooting this and say put a different quarterback in here and everything's going to be okay. I don't see that being the mix, and you've got to come to some tough answers. And I'm interested to know what Pete wants. Pete's always said that he has a 5-year plan, that he can see 5 years out, that he doesn't anticipate wanting to stop coaching at any point in that time. But does he have a stomach for another rebuild? Because if you trade Russell Wilson, that's what you're looking at. You're back. you're back to where you were in 2009, 2010, right? When you were looking for the Hasselbeck successor.
He's stoked, and I'm using his words. Pete Carroll is stoked. What are they, 3-8 or 3-9? I've lost track.
3-8.
He is stoked that his 3-8 football team today signed Adrian Peterson. I mean, if that's not typical Pete Carroll, 3-8. Let's see DJ Dallas run the ball at 3-8. Really? We're going to sit down in a 3-8, and his answer is, I'm trying to win the next football game. And if Adrian Peterson, I've wanted him for years, and he runs as tough now as he ever run. Well, he'd be on a team if he ran as tough as he ever run. But Pete Carroll is adding, we'll go back to the lipstick on a pig. Pete Carroll's adding Adrian Peterson to a 3-8 football team, Danny.
It feels like Edgerrin James in 2009 is what it feels like. And it's hard for me. I don't want to jump up and down too much because I don't think there are better options there. But I think it's silly, right? That's how I look at it. Adrian Peterson's been cooked for a long time, and you're not going anywhere. And the idea that he is going to provide a shot in the arm, I would agree with you. I'd rather see Travis Homer. I'd rather see DJ Dallas run. I don't get that. And Pete loves the way to introduce a new player and, hey, we're going to embrace and kind of create this alternative reality that has worked at different points. But at 3-8 with Adrian Peterson coming in, that just doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't. And what it feels like is that worked when they had a young defense that was knocking people around, and they don't have that. And it worked when you could see that nucleus of young talent that was sort of when they bring Terrell Owens in for a practice, right? Like that served a purpose because you saw how much better the young guys are. This isn't that. And what it feels like is it's a reflection of how far things have fallen here, is that it's a team so determined to run the ball, and you're now starting Alex Collins, who you released once upon a time, and Adrian Peterson, who has been a vagabond for 3 years now, that he loves playing too much to retire, but he's not an effective player anymore. Like he is not. The only reason you're signing him is because his name is Adrian Peterson.
It strikes me that it feels a lot like there's a head coach that's in denial as to where this team is this year and where this organization is. To be bringing in Adrian Peterson just seems to be ridiculous and laughable. Listen, that's it. That's it.
What a downer to end it on.
I'm sorry. I've got other people waiting in the waiting room. I'm like a doctor who needs to see other patients. You want to ring the bell, or do you want me to ring the bell, Danny?
You ring it. You ring that bell.
168p. Give it to me in the books. Give me a 168p's in the books.
168p is in the books.